What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Y'all, today we are embarking on a journey that I'm so excited about. We are starting our next YouTube course completely free of charge that dives into color match. Now, I have several color match tutorials on my channel already, but they either don't cover everything that you guys want them to cover, or they're just missing some pieces that after going back and watching them, I've realized I need to cover in order to give you guys an accurate and helpful color match tutorial. Now, I want to set some expectations on the front end. And the first one is that color match is really difficult. Color match is one of those modes that you shouldn't jump right into. You need to understand the way HueForge works and the way that it looks at color before you try diving into something like color match, which is why standard mode is the one that I recommend becoming so incredibly familiar with that it makes complete sense. And so if you're brand new to HueForge, hit pause on this video. It's okay. Go watch my 7-episode beginner series that I have. I'll even link it down in the description somewhere and check that out. That is going to get you familiar with the program, familiar with standard mode. And when I start doing things kind of in the program that you're like, Victor, why did you do that? Or how did you do that? That series will answer all of those questions. And if you still have questions after that, feel free to drop them in the comments or join our Discord. I'll leave a link to it in our description of this video. You can join, ask all the questions you want, because there are so many helpful people in our Discord willing to answer any questions that you might have. With all that being said, I need to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys for all of your help and support. You guys are what allow me to do what I love to do. And so thank you for being there. And if you're interested in joining as a patron, you can check out that link down in the description below, where you get free one-on-one coaching with me. You get tons of tutorials, live classes, Q&As, and all of that good stuff, including commercial license to all of my content. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's dive in. So this is going to be a 4-episode series, and this episode is going to specifically focus on the very basics of color match. So this is going to get us to a place where we are familiar with how color match works, and we're going to set up our mesh core and our color core. So we're going to do both of those in today's episode. This will be a very easy image to color match. I'm even going to give you guys this image down in the description below so that you can practice alongside with me. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and drag in our image for today. All right. Boom. We have our image. We are in standard mode, and we need to switch to color match. So we're going to click our mesh mode here, come down to color match, and now we are in color match mode. Now, if you are familiar with color match, then this looks really simple to you and nothing is scary. If you're brand new to color match, you're like, Victor, why do I have a whole nother bar here in the middle for color match? This is very scary. In standard mode, I have 1 bar. And in color match mode, I have 2 bars. Very freaky. Don't worry, it's not that scary. We're going to work through it. So we're in color match mode. We have our image dragged in. We're going to do a couple things. We want to make sure our HueForge is set up properly before we start kind of messing with the image. The first thing is I want to make sure that you guys have edit image turned on. That means when we make any adjustments to, say, our slider here, we are going to be editing our original image instead of the HueForge here. We want edit image turned on. We want our brightness adjust to actually be at 0. So we're going to put that on 0. We want our brightness comp to be set to standard, and we want our view analysis down here, okay, to be set on default CM. This is a big reason why when people watch my tutorials and their image looks different, it's because they're probably using a different view analysis, and that changes the image quite a bit. You see, if you're on HSLCM, you drag the image in and it already looks different than what mine does here. So make sure it's on default CM. We're not going to talk about view analysis at all today. It's complex and it's how HueForge looks at your image. Don't worry about it. Just make sure it's on default. Awesome. Let's talk about our sliders here in the middle. We have mesh core and we have color core, and they both do something different. Our color core is us telling HueForge where we want the colors to go on the actual print. And so if you're familiar with printing your own HueForges in your slider, you set your color swaps in your slicer, you set your color swaps there when you slice. This is the layers that you are adding, right? So if you have, it says 19 here and it says white, that means when you're in the slicer, you're going to put white at layer 19. The color core is just us telling HueForge where we want that color to start. Pretty simple. The same exact thing as in your standard mode or any of the other modes inside of HueForge. Your mesh core in this is a little bit different. Our mesh core is actually adjusting the mesh, the actual image, the geometry of our HueForge as we adjust it. And we can see this on display when we click on wireframe up here. So if you turn that on and we zoom really far in, we can see that our gray and our black here are on our wireframe, and you can actually see where the layer changes. So at layer 13 right here, you can actually see it go from black, the base color, to gray, which is the non-base color. And we can even see this probably illustrated even better. I need to try and zoom in accurately here. To the orange and to the yellow here. So we see the orange on the eye, and we see it change from white to orange. That means that swap is happening somewhere in here. And you can actually see that when I hover my mouse over a certain area, there's a little highlighted region on the eye that you can see where that layer actually is at. So when I adjust my color core, you're going to see my white move up and down. This is just adjusting where the white starts. You see how when I move the white up, we lose our orange, and when I move the white down, we gain more orange. And that's just because the white is starting at a different layer. When I move my mesh core white, you're going to see the actual model change. So it's actually moving the white down. And when I come up, it's actually moving the orange up. Okay. This is not important for you to know to be able to make color match images, but it's just important for you to understand, or it's good for you to understand what the mesh core is actually accomplishing. You're changing the literal geometry of the image as compared to our color core, where we are just editing where the color is starting. Okay. I know that's like if you're just starting in color match and you're like, Victor, that makes no sense, go hang out in standard mode for a little bit. I have plenty of tutorials on them. It will help you get an understanding of how HueForge is functioning. But that is the difference between the mesh core and the color core. So it means that we always want to start with the mesh core. The mesh core is going to be the most important because that's what's defining the geometry of our model. And so to switch between the color and mesh core, we have this little arrow down here. We can just click this arrow back and forth, and whichever core is highlighted is the one that we will be editing. So in this case, we're working on the mesh core, we're editing the mesh core. And when we are working on the color core, we're editing the color core. You're going to see this preview change regardless of where you're editing. So keep that in mind. So we have black on our first layer. This is a real filament. What I mean by a real filament is when I hover over it, it says Bamboo Basic Black TD 0.6. It means that you can order this filament online and it can show up to your house. But when we're working in mesh core, when we're setting the geometry of the model, we actually don't want to be working with a real filament. You can tell that a filament is real by the shape of the end here on our color. So the gray is a real gray. This is Bamboo Lab Basic Blue Gray with a TD of 3, and it has a flat end here. If I press Control, and this was a big question throughout all of my color match tutorials, if I press Control and then drag, and I change my black, you see that the end goes from being flat to being angled. This is a fake filament. This filament does not exist. You cannot go online and buy this filament. It has a TD value of 1, and it's just a placeholder. That's all it is. We are setting the model geometry. It's just a placeholder, but because real filaments have varying TD values, it can be difficult to get an accurate geometry shape that you need for your color core, which is why when we drag by control, clicking and drag, when we do that, all of the filaments have a base TD of 1. And that's going to help us kind of edit what the image is going to look like. So And you can check the TD value by hovering over and pressing the letter T, and then you can move your scroll wheel up and down to actually change the TD value of your fake filament. We're not going to be talking about that a ton today. Just know that the base or the kind of the default is TD of 1, and we're going to keep it at TD of 1 for the entire for this entire episode. So we need to get the shirt color now. So we're going to click and drag this kind of gray color, and I'm just going to replace my blue gray. And you can see that I'm actually going to press delete. We're not going to replace the blue gray. I'm just going to drag that in right there. So now we have the shirt color kind of loaded in. I think I'm going to put the black at 9 for now and the kind of gray t-shirt there at gray. Now, we have the background of orange and we have kind of these yellow eyes. I'm going to move my white to the absolute top, and I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to drag it right there. So now our white is right there at the top, and you can see I turned it into a fake filament by control clicking and dragging. And then I'm going to turn my orange into red. And now we have that background red. I'm going to move the red kind of here in the middle. If you want to get rid of a filament, you click delete. If you want to hide the filament, you press spacebar. We've covered that in other tutorials. All right. So we have our red loaded in. Now we have the skin tone, so we need to bring in the brown, and then we need to bring in the yellow eyes. So I'm going to click here on the kind of like a flat bar. You don't want to drag from in here, the more grainy areas. You want to drag from a flatter area with just a more consistent color, and we're going to drag that in, and now we have our skin tone loaded in. I'm going to bring that up to layer 15. Now, there is no science behind where I'm putting the colors here. I'm really just building up. I usually start with black and gray, and then whatever the next darkest color is. In this case, it would be the brown, and then red for the background. We're going to talk about more complex ways to edit this in future videos, but we're starting with the most basic. Some of y'all that are familiar with Color Match are like, Victor, what are you doing? Yeah, we'll talk about it later. And then we're going to drag in our yellow for the eye. Drag that. So now we have our mesh core kind of set here. It looks good. The image on the left looks like the image on the right, which is what we want. That's the goal of the mesh core. We want to get to as one of one as we can with our matching. Now we're ready to switch over to the color core. Now, when we click this little arrow button, it is going to freak us out. This does not look right. This looks wrong. This does not look like what we just created. And that's because we have real filaments loaded in that we need to switch out for filaments that represent the fake filaments that we just did on the color core. So to do that, I'm going to press delete. I'm going to get rid of my orange. I'm going to move my white all the way to the top. I'm going to move my black down one. I'm going to move my blue gray down one. And now we're at a point where we need to add our colored filaments, the gray or the brown, the red, and the yellow. So you're going to click on filaments over here on your filament library, and it's going to pull up all the filaments in Bambu Labs library. There's a cool little trick that you can use. You can right click on the fake filament. So this is fake, TD of 1. And you can click this find closest filament button. Now this is going to look at the hex code, the actual color of the filament. And it is going to pull what it thinks is the closest or most representative of the color, not the TD value. So if it pulled up, something that had a really high TD like this 15 brown, you can drag that in and it might be a close color, but it has a really high TD, which we've talked about in other tutorials. High TDs mean that it's going to allow a lot of the layer beneath it to shine through. And in this case, we don't want gray shining through the brown. So we want a really low TD brown. Now, there is a Bambu Lab basic cocoa brown that I have that I'm going to use for this image. Now, you might have a different brown. You may own the Kexaled brown. And in that case, you will drag that one in as a 1.5 TD. This is where it becomes less of a science and more of a theory, because the colors that I own in my library may be different from the ones that you own in your library. Which is why if you choose to use this Overture chocolate, you're going to get a different looking result than I will in this video. And that's okay. You're allowed to get a different result. As long as you like it and as long as it looks good, that's okay. For me, I have the Bamboo Lab Basic Chocolate Brown or Cocoa Brown, so I'm going to drag that in right there. Awesome. Now it's time for the red. I'm going to click find closest. Now, this one's a little interesting because I don't own any of these reds. I actually need to scroll down quite a bit to find the Bamboo Lab Basic Red, which is somewhere. It's right here. It's like number 30 on the list because this is the red that I have, and I'm going to drag it in. Now, this is where personal preference kind of comes in. I don't mind the darker red in the background. It's going to be less bright. It's going to be a little less vibrant. And to me, that's okay. So I can use this Bamboo Lab Basic Brown. But let's say you're like, Victor, no, I need it to be 1-for-1. Then you might need to go out and buy the Creality Hyper Red to get you more of that brighter color that you're looking for. This is a much closer match to the original image than the Bamboo Lab Basic Red, as you can see. But we're going to stick with the Bamboo Lab Basic Red for now. Awesome. Then we need to come to the yellow, find closest filament. The one that I own is Bamboo Lab. We have pumpkin orange that we can use. We could also use their sunflower yellow, which I actually think is a little bit better in this use case for this image. And we're going to drag that in. Now you can tell that this image is close. You could print this off and it would look fine. The 1-for-1 match, mesh core and color core. There are a couple tweaks that we can make to the image to actually make it a little bit closer to our original image. And you can tell here, I'm going to turn the wireframe off. You can tell that the eyes aren't as bright as I'd want them to be. And the red, we could maybe bring out a little bit more. So to do this, I'm going to revisit my mesh core. This is, again, this is theory. This is not science. This works sometimes, so it's worth trying. Doesn't work all the time. In this case, I'm actually going to bring my brown up a little bit. There's this thing inside of HueForge that whenever I bring on the mesh core, whenever I bring a color up, it will make the top color, or the color that's above it, a little bit brighter. So if I bring my brown up, you can see that my red becomes brighter. Notice that I'm still on my color core. I have not switched over here. If I switch over here, I'm not going to see that difference made because these are just TD1 fake filaments. It's not real. So I'm on my color core, and if I bring my brown up just one layer, you can see that the red becomes a lot more vibrant. I'll zoom in. You should be able to see that change. It's a significant change in our color. Now, if you go too high, you may actually end up editing parts of the image that you don't want to edit. So yeah, I need to bring the brown back. If I come like this, yeah, it doesn't actually change much, but this one changes quite a bit. And so I'm going to bring that brown up a layer. We get a much brighter kind of red in that image. Now, I want to do the same thing with the eyes here. And so if I want this color to be a bit brighter, I'm going to try and bring the red up a layer. You can see that one shift brings the eye color up so much. It draws out some of the red and it brings out much more of the yellow. And we can see that on display again with our white. If we want our white to be a little bit brighter, we can bring up the yellow a little bit. You can tell that it's not making a significant difference with the white. You can click find closest filament. I'm using the Bamboo Lab Basic Jade White, but Bamboo Lab Basic Ivory White might be a good pick here because it has a little bit of a lower TD, which means that it will be a lot brighter when we drag it in. So I swapped out my Jade White for the Ivory White. And that image looks much closer to me than the one that we had when it was just a 1-for-1. And it just required us moving the mesh core up just a little bit. So that is how you get a very basic color match on an image. This image works particularly well to start with because there's not a lot of blending happening. Blending inside of color match becomes more difficult. And so as you're learning color match, I would encourage you to find images that have very clear and distinct colors. The red, the brown, the gray, the black, the white, the yellow. This is a very easy image to color match because the colors are very segmented. They're very distinct. They're very easy to see, which gives us a good kind of base to learn. If you're working with an image that has a lot of blending and a lot of gradients, blush on the face, it can be more difficult. It's not impossible. It's just more difficult to learn with those more difficult to use images. So with all that being said, that is the very basic color match to this image. I hope I covered everything that we need for this first episode, kind of get our feet wet a little bit with color match. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your comments that are real, genuine questions. If you're struggling with something, let me know down in the comments. If you get angry that you can't figure it out, or you're just struggling kind of getting something that looks good, feel free to join our Discord. I'll leave it linked down in the description below. You can ask all the questions that you want to ask there in our Discord. We have so many people, including some of our Patreon members, that are more than capable of being able to answer a lot of the questions that you may have. And so feel free to use us as a resource. And if you're wanting to fast track your HueForge growth this year in 2026, feel free to join our Patreon. I think I have 4 spots left in our coaching tier, which means you get free one-on-one coaching with me included in the price of the subscription. You get 2 kind of advanced tutorials each month, as well as 1 live class where we all come together and talk about HueForge in a live class setting. If that sounds interesting to you, if you're wanting to learn a new skill this year, make sure to check it out. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to send them my way. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm excited. I'll see you guys in the next episode that will hopefully drop at some point next week. Until then, y'all, take care.